Welcome to Awesome Chapter, the podcast where we explore some of the world's most inspiring and influential books.
And today we are digging into a true giant in the field.
We really are. We're undertaking a deep exploration of a text that has fundamentally shaped modern thought on personal development, a book known globally for its framework on true effectiveness, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
And of course, the intellectual powerhouse behind that work, Stephen R. Covey. This is a text that is, it's often quoted, but maybe rarely understood at its deepest level.
That is exactly why we're here. We are tackling a book that challenges the conventional, often shallow definition of success. Look around you, and you'll see people who have achieved every external milestone, the corner office, the financial stability, the public accolades. But Covey saw this profound inner distance again and again.
Right. He saw these executives who were struggling with a lack of self-worth or with these chronic relationship breakdowns.
Or that just shocking moment of waking up and realizing you have utterly sacrificed your family life for your career. The latter was leaning against the wrong wall.
It's the paradox of what he calls secondary greatness without primary goodness. Our mission today is crucial. We are diving past the well-known bullet points.
We have to.
We need to unpack the foundational philosophy that underpins all 7 habits, the historical shift from what he calls the character ethic to the personality ethic, the revolutionary nature of paradigm shifts, and the sequential logic of the maturity continuum.
These are the core elements. Without them, the habits are just a list of tips.
Exactly. They are the core required for achieving not just efficiency, but true, lasting, personal, and relational effectiveness.
So let's start right there with Covey's initial observation, this problem of superficial success. He saw these outwardly impressive people, the diligent professional, the successful executive who were still suffering from a deep inner hunger.
And they were caught in these cycles, these chronic recurring issues that quick fixes just couldn't solve.
Think about the common struggles he points out.
Right, like the person who resolves to change their diet, fills their journal with positive affirmations, but finds their motivation, their attitude just fizzles out. Why? Because they can't even keep a simple promise to themselves.
Or the manager who works so hard to be friendly and approachable, uses all the right techniques, but still deals with constant employee turnover and feels zero loyalty from their team.
And the ultimate irony, which I think a lot of us can relate to, the person who attends every single time management seminar buys all the latest apps.
Oh, yeah.
And yet still feels completely pressured, stressed, and just nowhere near that peaceful, productive life they're chasing.
The problem, as Covey diagnosed it, wasn't a lack of technique or a bad attitude.
No.
It was a misalignment. It stemmed from these deeply held and often incorrect beliefs or paradigms about what success actually is.
And to trace that misalignment, you really have to look back at the history of, success literature. Covey's research found this dramatic shift in how success was defined over the 20th century.
The original approach, the one that was prevalent in American success literature for its first 150 years, was centered entirely on what he termed the character ethic.
This was foundational. It focused exclusively on traits like integrity, humility, fidelity, courage, justice, patience, industry, and, the golden rule.
It wasn't about what you did to others, but who you were.
Exactly. Success was about integrating these basic principles into your very nature. The prime example he gives is Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, where Franklin details his rigorous, systematic effort to master 13 virtues. That was the benchmark of character-based success.
But then, largely after World War I, everything changed. We saw the rise of the personality ethic.
And this is the shift that Covey argues really derailed true effectiveness.
How so?
Well, under the personality ethic, success suddenly became a function of external factors. Your personality, your public image, your attitude, your behavior, and all these specific human relations techniques designed to lubricate interaction.
And you see 2 dominant paths emerge there.
That's right. The first is a reliance on human relations techniques, and the second is this intense focus on positive mental attitude, or PMA.
That's where all those familiar maxims come from, like, your attitude determines your altitude.
Precisely. Or all the advice on just projecting confidence. And while Covey admits that some of that is beneficial, a positive attitude is better than a negative one. A much darker element crept in.
The manipulative stuff.
The manipulative and deceptive stuff, absolutely. We're talking about advice like faking an interest in a colleague's hobbies just to get something from them, or using the power look to intimidate a room.
It just sounds exhausting because it's all a performance, and it leads directly to this illusion that Covey warns about. Secondary greatness.
Secondary greatness is just social recognition. It's public acclaim based on your skills and your image. These things aren't bad, but they're only sustainable if they rest on a bedrock of what he calls primary goodness, your genuine character.
Because if your character is marked by duplicity or a lack of integrity, people will eventually sense it.
They always do. They'll feel that gap between your words and your reality, and any technique you use, no matter how polished, will come across as manipulative.
It's the classic short-term win, long-term ruin scenario. You can't sustain human relationships, which are governed by natural laws, through deception. And I love the analogy he uses here about trying to cram for a harvest.
The law of the harvest. It's so powerful, it dictates that you have to plant in the spring, you have to cultivate all summer, and then you reap in the fall.
You can't just doof off all spring and summer and then decide to cram the harvest in September.
No, it doesn't work that way. And in relationships, there are no shortcuts. Trust has to be sown and cultivated over time. Your character will always communicate more powerfully than any technique.
Which brings us back to that piercing observation from Emerson. What you are shouts so loudly in my ears that I cannot hear what you say.
That's it. If the character foundation is weak, the techniques are just noise. And this mismatch between our map, our beliefs about success, and the territory, the natural principles, brings us to the core element that governs everything: paradigms.
A paradigm, in Covey's language, isn't as complex as it sounds. It's just our map of reality.
Right. It's a model, a frame of reference. It's the way we perceive, understand, and interpret the world.
And the analogy is so critical. The map is not the territory.
Yes. Think about his example. If you're given a map of Detroit, but you're actually trying to navigate Chicago, what happens?
Well, you're lost. You could try harder, run faster, be more diligent, have a really positive attitude about it, but none of that changes the root problem.
Your map is wrong.
Your map is wrong. All your effort just takes you to the wrong place faster.
Exactly. The fundamental issue isn't your motivation. It's the flawed paradigm. It's the inaccurate belief about how the world works. And this is why trying to fix chronic problems by just hacking away at the leaves, your attitude and behavior, is totally futile.
You need a shift at the root level. You need a paradigm shift.
Which often comes from a moment of profound realization. Covey shares his own story about his son, who was struggling in school. They tried everything: therapy, positive reinforcement, tutoring.
All the external techniques from the personality ethic?
All of it. And nothing worked because their underlying paradigm, their map, was skewed. They were unintentionally communicating to their son that he was incapable and needed their protection.
And they finally realized.
They realized that to truly change the situation, they had to change their perception of him. They had to move from seeing him as a problem to seeing him as a person with immense untapped potential. And that meant they had to be different as parents.
They had to demonstrate trust and belief, not just say it.
Yes. It wasn't until they changed the way they saw him that he could change the way he was. That moment when they changed their map changed everything.
True. Lasting change doesn't start with doing something new. It starts with seeing something old in a profoundly new way.
So as we move toward the habits themselves, there are two last foundational concepts we have to lock in. First, this idea that principles are like natural laws.
Right. The character ethic is based on the belief that principles like fairness, integrity, and human dignity govern our effectiveness, just like gravity governs physics.
And the closer our paradigms, our maps, align with those immutable laws, the more effective we become.
And second, we need a really solid definition of what effectiveness even is. Covey gives us that with the principle of the PPC balance.
This concept, which he pulls from Aesop's fable of the goose and the golden egg, is maybe the most critical framework in the entire book. It's so simple, but so profound.
So P stands for production.
P is production. It's the desired results, the things you want to accomplish. It's the golden eggs.
And PC?
PC is production capability. That's the asset, the resource, or the capacity that produces those results. It's the health of the goose.
And the tragedy of the fable, of course, is the farmer's short-sighted greed. He's so driven by immediate gain, the P,
the golden eggs,
that he kills the goose, sacrificing his PC, and ends up with nothing.
And we do this constantly in modern life. The PPC balance is broken everywhere you look.
Oh, absolutely. On a personal level, we burn the candle at both ends. We sacrifice our PC, our health, our sleep, our relationships for short-term P.
We get the project finished, we cram for the test.
Right, but we completely deplete the asset, the very thing that allows us to produce in the long run.
And think about the corporate world. So many companies focus obsessively on short-term production quarterly returns, immediate cost cutting.
And in doing so, they sacrifice their PC. They fail to invest in employee training, they cut maintenance on essential equipment.
Or they create such a high-stress environment that employee morale and loyalty, the foundational goose, are completely decimated. They hit their quarterly P target while destroying their long-term capacity for innovation.
So if the PPC balances the target, that sustainable effectiveness, then the path to get there is what Covey calls the maturity continuum.
Yes, and this is key. The 7 habits are not just a random checklist. They are an incremental, sequential approach for moving along this continuum.
We all start at the same place, dependence.
You take care of me. We rely on others for our physical, mental, and emotional needs. A dependent person simply can't choose healthy interdependence. They can choose counterdependence, maybe, but not true cooperation.
So the first vital step is moving to independence.
I can take care of myself.
Yeah.
This is about self-reliance, being inner-directed, standing on your own 2 feet. This is the goal of habits 1, 2, and 3.
Which together form the private victory. You have to conquer yourself before you can hope to work effectively with others.
But independence is not the end goal. The highest form of effective living is interdependence. We can work together.
This is the realization that working collaboratively creates synergy. You can achieve far more together than you ever could alone.
And this requires the security and maturity that you gain from independence. This is achieved through habits 4, 5, and 6, which he calls the public victory.
And finally, habit 7, renewal, is the process that circles and powers all the other habits, creating an upward spiral of continuous growth.
This whole sequential structure is why the book demands an inside-out approach.
You can't start with the public victory. It just won't work.
It's impossible. Effectiveness has to begin with the self, with your character, your paradigms, your motives. It is absolutely futile to try and use human relation skills if the foundation of self-mastery is missing.
You can't invert the process.
Never. You have to plant the seeds of habits 1, 2, and 3 before you can ever hope to see the harvest of habits 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, so let's get into that private victory. The journey of self-mastery begins with habit 1, be proactive, the principle of personal vision.
This is fundamentally about understanding the unique human gifts that we all possess. And the primary gift is self-awareness.
The ability to stand apart from ourselves and examine our own thoughts, moods, and feelings.
Right. We are not our emotions. We have the capacity to choose our response in that space between a stimulus and our reaction. This self-awareness is what separates us from the animal kingdom. Animals are programmed by instinct. We have the power to write our own programs.
And there's no story that illustrates this more powerfully than the experience of Viktor Frankl in the Nazi death camps.
I mean, he was stripped of everything, his family, his physical liberty, his dignity. Yet in that unimaginable hell, he discovered what he called the last of the human freedoms.
The power to choose his internal response.
Even when subjected to torture and starvation, he retained that power. He refused to let his tormentors destroy his character. He would use his mind to project himself into a future where he was free, lecturing students on the psychological lessons he was learning.
He kept his intellectual and spiritual life alive internally.
Yes. His experience proved that our circumstances can hurt us physically or economically, but our character, our fundamental identity, is untouchable unless we consent to its injury.
Frankl's story highlights the other crucial human endowments Covey talks about: imagination, our conscience, and our independent will.
And this brings us to the core difference between being proactive and reactive. Reactive people are driven by circumstances, by feelings, by their conditioning. Their identity is often shaped by the social mirror, the opinions and expectations of others.
While proactive people subordinate their feelings to their deeply held values, their actions are based on conscious choice. They understand that love, for example, isn't just a feeling, it's a verb. It's a choice to act, to sacrifice.
And the key insight, simple but so profound, is accepting this accountability. No one can hurt you without your consent. You can't choose otherwise until you can honestly say, I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday.
The practical measure of our proactivity is where we focus our time and energy, which he visualizes with the circle of concern and the circle of influence.
The circle of concern is huge. It's everything we worry about but have no real control over. The national debt, the political climate, the weather, other people's weaknesses.
And focusing there just leads to blaming, accusing, reactive language, a feeling of victimization.
It's focused on the haves. If only I had a better boss. If only my spouse had more patience.
whereas proactive people focus their energy inside their circle of influence.
The CI is the things they can do something about. Their own habits, their attitude, their professional development, their integrity.
This focus is on the Bs. I can be more resourceful, I can be more patient.
And by working only in their circle of influence, they generate this positive energy that causes their influence to naturally grow.
This applies to any problem we face. Covey breaks them down into 3 categories.
Right. There's direct control, which is our own behavior, and that's solved by working on our habits, the private victory. Then there's indirect control, other people's behavior, solved by changing our methods of influence, the public victory.
And then there's no control.
Situational realities. And when you're faced with a no-control problem, like a market downturn or a chronic illness, the proactive choice isn't to fight it.
It's to peacefully accept it.
Yes, which frees up the energy you need to shift your internal attitude. You change the line on your face and not try to move an immovable object. You refuse to empower it to control you.
And he challenges us to try this with the Proactivity 30-day test. Work only in your circle of influence for a month. Make and keep small commitments to yourself to build that inner integrity.
Which leads us perfectly into habit 2. Begin with the end in mind, the principle of personal leadership.
This is the first creation. If habit 1 says you are the creator, habit 2 demands that you define what it is you're creating.
This is the principle of 2 creations. All things are created twice.
First, the mental creation, the blueprint, the plan, the design.
And second, the physical creation, the building, the doing, the execution. If that mental creation is flawed, the physical one is going to be a disaster.
You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, or launch a business without a business plan.
Or, and this is so critical, raise children without a clear vision of the kind of responsible, self-disciplined adult you hope they become. If we don't take charge of that first creation in our own lives, we're just living out scripts handed to us by others. We're living by default.
This is where he makes that classic distinction between leadership and management.
Yes. Management is the bottom line. It's about efficiency and execution, or how best to do things.
While leadership is the top line, it's about effectiveness and definition, or what are the right things to do.
It's the difference between sharpening the machetes and climbing the tallest tree to make sure your crew isn't cutting a path through the wrong jungle.
Efficient management without effective leadership is, as he says, like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic.
It's a brutal assessment, but it's true. It's maximizing your effort toward a goal that is completely irrelevant or even disastrous.
So to make sure our ladder is against the right wall, we have to engage in what he calls re-scripting.
Using our self-awareness, our imagination, and our conscience to write our own script based on our deepest values, not on external pressures.
And the most effective way to do this is to develop a personal mission statement.
A personal constitution. It focuses on what you want to be, your character, and what you want to do, your contributions and achievements. It has to be anchored in unchanging principles to act as your compass.
And to anchor that mission, we have to define our center. Whatever is at the core of our life becomes the source of our security, our guidance, our wisdom, and our power.
And Covey spends a lot of time detailing how vulnerable all the other common centers are. If your center is your spouse, your security is totally dependent on their moods.
If it's your work, you're vulnerable to a layoff. If it's money, you're vulnerable to an economic crisis.
If it's pleasure, you're just sacrificing long-term fulfillment for a quick hit of gratification. They're all external, and they all change.
The only stable, unchanging core is to be principle-centered.
Your security comes from knowing principles don't change. Your guidance comes from having an accurate map. And your power comes from the ability to act on your self-chosen values. Your proactivity, unrestricted by the shifting attitudes of others.
Which give you a deep, intrinsic sense of worth that external crises can't really touch.
And to really internalize this mission, he suggests using right brain tools like visualization and affirmation.
This is more than just chanting positive slogans. It's about actively using your imagination to see the future you're creating.
A good affirmation has to be personal, positive, present tense, visual, and emotional. Instead of saying, I hope I'll be more patient, you'd say something like, it is deeply satisfying that I respond with wisdom, love, and self-control when my children misbehave.
You're writing the script. You're creating that mental picture that habit 3 is then designed to execute.
Exactly. Which brings us to habit 3. Put first things first. The principles of personal management.
This is the physical creation. This is the doing it part. It's the daily application of our independent will to execute the plan from habit 2.
The challenge isn't time management, it's self-management. And the main tool here is the time management matrix.
It forces us to look beyond just urgency and focus on importance.
Remember, urgent things demand immediate attention. They act on you like a ringing phone. Important things contribute to your mission and values. They require proactivity and initiative, like planning or building relationships.
And the activities are broken into 4 quadrants.
Right. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important. Crises, problems, deadlines. Living here leads to stress and burnout.
Quadrant 3 is urgent but not important. Interruptions, some meetings, some mail. They feel urgent, but they're usually based on someone else's priorities.
Quadrant 4 is not urgent and not important, just trivia, time wasters.
And the secret of truly effective people is that they live in Quadrant 2.
Not urgent, but important. This is the heart of it all. Relationship building, long-range planning, exercise, preventative maintenance, writing your mission statement.
Effective people are opportunity-minded. As he says, they feed opportunities and starve problems.
And these Quadrant 2 activities are what make a tremendous positive difference over the long haul. His example of the shopping center managers is great. They quadrupled the time they spent building helpful relationships with their tenants, a Q2 activity, and saw a dramatic increase in results. They nurtured the PC.
But to spend time in Quadrant 2, you have to learn to say no to all the urgent noise from Quadrants 3 and 4.
And the only way you can say no to those things is if you have a bigger yes burning inside. Your mission from Habit 2 gives you the willpower to resist the tyranny of the urgent.
And he gives us a practical system for this. Weekly organizing.
Looking at your week, not just your day, it involves 4 key steps. Identifying your roles, selecting a few key goals for each role, scheduling specific time for those goals, and then daily adapting.
That last one is key. You're not a slave to the schedule. You subordinate the schedule to a higher principle if needed.
Finally, Habit 3 covers the highest leverage activity for any manager, effective delegation. This is the leap from being a producer to being a manager.
And there's a huge difference between go for delegation and stewardship delegation.
Go for delegation is all about methods. Go do this, do it this way, and tell me when you're done. It's micromanagement.
Whereas stewardship delegation is focused on results. It gives freedom within clear parameters.
It requires 5 elements. Clearly defining the desired results, the guidelines or boundaries, the available resources, the standards for accountability, and the consequences, both good and bad.
Delegating this way is probably the single most powerful high-leverage activity there is.
It exponentially increases P by maximizing PC, which in this case is your people.
Okay, so that's the private victory. Now we make that crucial transition to the public victory, from self-mastery to interdependence. And Covey is so clear, private victory must come first.
You simply cannot be effective in relationships without a foundation of character. Trying to use human relations skills without integrity is, as he says, like putting icing on wet sand.
The moment a challenge arises, the whole thing just collapses. You can't talk your way out of problems you behave yourself into.
That's the one. And the relational equivalent of the PPC balance is the emotional bank account, the EBA. This is a metaphor for the amount of trust in any relationship.
You make deposits through courtesy, kindness, honesty, keeping commitments.
And these deposits build up a reserve, a buffer that compensates for the inevitable mistakes we all make.
And you make withdrawals through discourtesy, disrespect, breaking promises.
And when the account is overdrawn, every single conversation feels tense. You're walking through a minefield.
This hits home so hard, especially with parenting. The father who has made years of withdrawals, criticizing, dismissing feelings, will find his EBA is so low that when his teenage son faces a major decision, he won't be open to any advice at all.
The trust just isn't there. So Covey lists 5 key ways to make major deposits. First, understanding the individual. What's a deposit for one person might not be for another.
You have to treat them as they want to be treated, which requires deep listening.
Second, attending to the little things. Small courtesies matter. Small discourtesies are huge withdrawals.
Third, keeping commitments. A promise kept is a massive deposit. A promise broken can wipe out the account.
Fourth, clarifying expectations. So many problems in work and marriage come from unclarified expectations about roles and responsibilities.
And fifth, showing personal integrity. This means being loyal to those who are not present. If you badmouth your boss to a colleague, that colleague instantly learns that you are untrustworthy.
Integrity is about wholeness. It's consistency.
With a healthy EBA, we can then approach interactions with Habit 4. Think win-win.
This is a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit. It sees life as a cooperative arena, not a competitive one. You're always searching for the third alternative.
Which is a huge shift from the win-lose paradigm that's so deeply scripted into us from childhood.
Through comparative grading, sports, even conditional love from parents, it leads to this authoritarian approach. I get my way, you lose.
And he has that great example of the race to Bermuda.
Perfect illustration. The company president is preaching teamwork, but the reward system only gives a trip to the single top-performing manager. The structure itself makes cooperation impossible and drives win-lose behavior.
Besides win-lose, he details other paradigms like lose-win, lose-lose, and just win. But the most mature is win-win or no deal.
I love this one. It sets a high standard. It says, if we can't find a solution that truly benefits both of us, we agree to gracefully walk away. No hard feelings.
It preserves the relationship, the PC, rather than forcing a bad deal for a short-term P.
But win-win isn't just a technique. It requires a strong character base built on 3 traits.
First is integrity, which we developed in habits 1, 2, and 3.
Second is maturity, which he defines as the balance between courage, expressing your own feelings and convictions, and consideration, respect for the other person's.
High courage, low consideration is win-lose. High consideration, low courage is lose-win.
Exactly. And third is the abundance mentality, the belief that there is plenty out there for everybody.
This is the opposite of the scarcity mentality, which sees life as a limited pie. If you get a big slice, that means there's less for me.
People with a scarcity mentality have a very hard time sharing credit or being genuinely happy for others' success. The abundance mentality flows from deep inner security and allows you to seek mutual benefit.
And once you have that character base, you can create win-win agreements, which basically use the same 5 elements as stewardship delegation to formalize the partnership.
Which brings us to the centerpiece of all this, habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
He calls this the single most important principle of interpersonal communication. Diagnose before you prescribe.
But our deeply ingrained default is what he calls autobiographical listening. We listen with the intent to reply. We filter everything through our own experiences.
So when someone shares a problem, our first instinct is, oh, I know exactly how you feel. Let me tell you about my similar experience.
Which completely fails to provide what he calls psychological air. When people talk, they are desperately seeking to be understood first. If you jump in with your advice or your story, you're shutting them down. You're proving you were just waiting for your turn to speak.
You can't expect to be understood if you haven't first given understanding.
The alternative is empathic listening. Listening with the genuine intent to understand the other person's frame of reference, their feelings, their underlying meaning, not just their words.
You have to step inside their paradigm and see the world as they see it.
And it's risky. It requires vulnerability because by truly understanding them, you open yourself up to being influenced. But that vulnerability is the key to gaining influence yourself.
When we listen autobiographically, we fall into 4 traps: evaluating, agreeing, or disagreeing, probing, asking questions from our own agenda, advising, giving counsel from our experience, and interpreting, trying to psychoanalyze them.
All 4 make the other person defensive. But once you provide that psychological air through empathic listening, then you can move to the second part. Then seek to be understood.
And for this, he uses the ancient Greek framework: ethos, pathos, and logos.
Ethos is your personal credibility, your integrity. It's the balance in your EBA. Pathos is the empathic side aligning with the other person's emotional reality. And logos is the logic of your argument.
When you present your ideas in the context of a deep understanding of their concerns, when you lead with pathos, your overall credibility is massively enhanced.
You're not just speaking at them, you're speaking to their reality.
This all culminates in habit 6, synergize the principles of creative cooperation.
Synergy is the apex. It's where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. 1 + 1 = 3 or 10 or 100. It's the spontaneous creation of new alternatives that neither party could have imagined on their own.
And the essence of synergy is valuing differences.
Yes. Unity is not sameness, it is complementarity. The goal is to respect differences, build on collective strength, and compensate for collective weaknesses.
He uses the animal school fable to show what happens when you don't value differences.
Where they try to teach the duck to run and the rabbit to fly. They focus on weaknesses instead of leveraging strengths, and everyone ends up mediocre and frustrated.
To achieve synergy, you need openness and security. You have to be willing to leave the base camp of your own paradigm.
And this is why the private victory is so critical. The internal security you gain from habits 1, 2, and 3 is what makes you secure enough to be vulnerable for true synergy. Otherwise, you end up with negative synergy politicking, rivalry, and defensive communication.
A key tool for this is your attitude when you encounter a different perception, like with that ambiguous young lady-old woman drawing.
The synergistic response is not to argue, but to say, good, you see it differently. Help me see what you see. That affirms them and creates the space for collaboration.
And this process leads to the third alternative, a solution that's better than what either of you started with.
Like the couple planning a vacation. One wants a rustic hiking trip, the other a family resort. Instead of a miserable compromise, they synergize to create a unique trip that meets both of their deepest needs in a new way.
And all of this starts with intrapersonal synergy, the synergy within yourself.
The integration of your logical, analytical left brain and your creative, intuitive right brain. That's the internal foundation for external synergy.
So after all that, we get to the final habit, habit 7, sharpen the saw, the principles of balanced self-renewal.
This isn't just a final chapter. It's the process that makes all the other habits possible. It's continuous improvement. It's taking care of the PC, the goose itself.
And his recommendation is simple but powerful. Commit to spending at least 1 hour a day, every day, on renewal across 4 key dimensions.
First, the physical dimension. Caring for your body through exercise, rest, and nutrition. This is a daily private victory that reinforces habit 1 and builds self-trust.
Second, the mental dimension. Continuing your education, expanding your mind.
So many people let their minds atrophy after they finish school. He urges us to read broadly, to write in a journal, to clarify our thinking, and to organize and plan. Your real economic security isn't your job. It's your power to think, learn, and adapt.
Third is the social-emotional dimension, which is really about integrating habits 4, 5, and 6 into your daily interactions.
This isn't something you schedule. You do it constantly by being courteous, by serving others, and by making deposits of unconditional love into your EBAs.
And this dimension also highlights the power of service and contribution.
Yes. A long, healthy, happy life is so often the result of having meaningful projects and contributing to something outside of yourself. As he says, we must earn thy neighbor's love.
And finally, the spiritual dimension. This is your core, your center. It provides guidance and commitment to your value system.
For some, that might be meditation or time in nature. For others, it could be art or music. It's what provides the energy and commitment to maintain the discipline in the other 3 dimensions.
And the beauty of it is the synergy and renewal.
Improving one dimension dramatically increases your ability in the others. Physical health improves mental clarity. Spiritual strength improves emotional resilience. Habit 7 maximizes the effectiveness of all 6 previous habits.
This entire process fuels the upward spiral. We continually learn, commit, and do on increasingly higher planes.
And that upward movement is guided by our educated conscience, that ultimate human endowment that senses our alignment with correct principles. It keeps us on track, sustaining that PPC balance for a lifetime.
So this deep dive has really explored Stephen R. Covey's fundamental thesis, that true effectiveness stems from shifting away from the personality ethic, the world of quick-fix techniques and image, and back to building character based on unchanging principles, the character ethic.
It demands an inside-out approach. You have to move sequentially from dependence through the private victory of self-mastery to the public victory of interdependence, all sustained by the constant vital process of renewal in Habit 7.
The core challenge at the end of the day isn't really in understanding these ideas. It's in finding the internal power to overcome our deeply ingrained chronic habits that violate these basic principles.
Habits are like a cable. We weave a strand of it every day, and soon it cannot be broken. Covey argues that they can be broken, but it takes a tremendous effort, like the energy a spacecraft needs to break Earth's gravitational pull. So as you think about starting your own upward spiral, consider this. What deeply ingrained, ineffective habit represents the gravitational pull you are ready to break free from right now?
We hope this exploration has inspired you to initiate that change and start applying these foundational principles of true effectiveness. Tune in next time as we open another awesome chapter.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to support the show and stay updated on future episodes.